is the History of Special Education, presented by Julie Matthews. Our timeline begins in 1601. Queen Elizabeth enacted poor laws to aid the devastating poor, orphaned, and crippled. In 1776, Founding Father Stephen Hopkins, who had cerebral palsy, signed the Declaration of Independence. He was quoted as saying, "My hands may tremble, my heart does not." In 1784, Valentin Huet was the father or apostle to the blind. He founded an institution for blind children. In 1815, Thomas Gaudet left the United States to learn how to teach the deaf. When he returned in 1817, he founds the Connecticut Asylum for the Education and Instruction of Deaf and Dumb Persons. This school is still in operation, but is now known as simply as Gaudet School. In 1840, P.T. Barnum purchased the American Museum, where he showcased and exploited freaks, some of whom were disabled. In 1845, Dorothea Dix, a journalist and advocate, found a great need for a separate facility for the mentally ill in the jail. This founded the first asylum for the mentally ill in Trenton, New Jersey. In 1862, Joseph Carey Merrick, also known as the Elephant Man, became known for his severe physical deformities. He used his deformities to earn a living as a freak show. In 1911, the Eugenics Records Office opens. Eugenics was aimed to breed out disease and disabilities with actions including involuntary sterilization. In 1917, Congress passed the first major rehab program for World War I veterans returning with disabilities. In 1935, President Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act, a program with permanent assistance to adults with disabilities. In 1938, President Roosevelt starts a program as a way to eradicate polio, which Roosevelt contracted. After polio was no longer a threat, it focused on birth defects, premature birth, and infant mortality, which eventually becomes the March of Dimes. In 1962, Ed Roberts, who is disabled from polio, enrolls at Berkeley and gets denied. Because of this, he becomes the father of independent living movement. Also, in 1962, Eunice Kennedy Shriver starts a summer camp for intellectual disabilities. In 1968, she founds the Special Olympics in honor of her disabled sister, Rosemary. In 1963, John F. Kennedy addresses Congress about the overcrowding conditions in mental institutions. This begins the deinstitutionalization of asylums. In 1968, in an expose titled "Suffer the Little Children" by Bill Baldini on Pennhurst Asylum, it addressed their overcrowding, lack of personnel, funding, and just general care. This facility was meaning to hold 1,900 people. It housed over 2,800. They only had 11 teachers, none of whom were certified in special education. It finally closes in 1987. Similar to Pennhurst, in 1972, Geraldo Rivera did an expose on Willowbrook Asylum. It also suffered from overcrowding, lack of personnel, and funding. There was one personnel to attend to over 70 residents. These residents were in deplorable conditions, often unclothed and covered in feces. Willowbrook often had outbreaks of hepatitis, which led to inhumane medical experiments. In 1987, it also closes its doors. In 1973, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act is signed. People with disabilities seeking employment could not be discriminated against in programs that receive federal funding. In 1975, the IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is a law that guarantees free, appropriate public education for all children in the least restrictive environment. In 1978, the National Council of Disabilities was established as an advisory board within the Department of Education for all, guaranteeing equal opportunity for all people with disabilities. In 1990, Americans with Disabilities Act becomes law, signed by George W. Bush. It brings cross-disability support by bringing all organizations together for the same cause. In 1995, Superman Christopher Reeves falls off his horse and suffers a severe spinal fracture. Because of this injury, he begins a search for a cure utilizing the controversial use of stem cell research. From 1990 to 2003, the Department of Energy, along with the National Institutes of Health, fund the Human Genome Project. Research from this project allows scientists to sequence human genetics. Its research can help identify how genetics and disabilities are related. This timeline represents my opinion of the events that I found to be important to the advancement of equal rights to people with disabilities. To see how far we have come was both uplifting and disheartening. I was very disturbed by many of these events and the treatment of disabled people. At times, they were treated as less than animals. I was also appreciative of those going to battle for people with disabilities. However, there never should have been a battle for equal human rights should apply to all humans.